Hi, everybody. So welcome to the Summer Encore Parentis Literary Salon. This is Christina Chiu right there. Yay. And we love her. And she's the curator of the Parentis Literary Salons. This is the first Summer Encore Literary Salon that we've ever done. And it is very interesting to do something right in the middle of the summer, because I don't know whose brain is in literary mode, but mine is in like wine and sleep mode. So, but it should be really exciting. And we really do have some amazing authors for you tonight. All three authors have books that are, they're trying to do launches, they're trying to get publicity. And we have a lot to talk about in terms of what can be done during the coronavirus time, what can't be done, how do you work when you have kids in your house 24/7, because that's a thing. So there's a lot of topics that we're going to try to cover tonight. And we'll just introduce you to all of our panelists one by one. So this, and then Christina will introduce them one at a time. They're going to do their readings, and then we'll have some Q&A as a big happy family. So, another really cool thing about it is that every one of these readers has read for us in the past. So they all have, they're all on their second, third, fourth, 10th novels, and we're really excited to have them back and to hear how things have changed and how they're doing right now. So let me just add first Gae Polisner and here is Joanna Hershon, and finally Elizabeth Kadetsky. So welcome to the panelists. Hello, panelists. And Christina will go through and introduce you each one by one, and that will be the whole thing. We don't actually have anything to announce, which is really unusual. Normally during the season, we have all these things to announce and fellowships and things. We are still having our meetups online, which if you are a parent and a writer, at any point, come on our website and you can sign up. We have free memberships and we have different title membership levels, and you can join us. We are doing Zooms. They're accountability Zooms. So every week people set goals and they get to know their little group of authors, and everybody there is a writer and a parent. So we really get it, like why things might not go the way you wanted to in a week, but we also push you to make sure that they do go as well as they can go in that week. So if you're interested in a parent-writer accountability group, come and join us on penparentis.org, and we will be happy to connect you to one of our 5 accountability groups that we have going. And some of them are national. So even if you're living on the West Coast, we do have a national group which meets Eastern time very late at night for you, so that you can have a reasonable time to meet with us. So anyway, we hope that you will do that. And other than that, we are in the middle of judging the fellowship, which is very exciting. And that's it. I'm going to turn it over to Christina.
Hi, everyone. So, we do have this extra salon, and there's a real reason for it. And it's that when you work on a book for a year, 2 years, whatever, and then you happen to be launching during COVID, it's like you don't even know what to do. You start to go, what do I do? And all those years you've been working on your book, you're wondering, well, what do I do now? So Milda and I wanted to have an extra salon because we have Parentis authors who do need to kind of get their book out there, and we want to be able to help. So our first reader is Joanna Hershon. Joanna, I know from Columbia because when I was at Columbia getting my MFA, she was there as well with Milda. And it's so nice to see that she has continued, despite children, to produce work, which is amazing. Joanna Hershon is the author of 5 novels: St. Ivo, Swimming, The Outside of August, The German Bride, and A Dual Inheritance. Her writing has appeared in Granta, the New York Times, One Story, the Virginia Quarterly Review, the literary anthologies Brooklyn Was Mine and Freud's Blind Spot, and was shortlisted for the 2007 O. Henry Prize Awards. She teaches in the creative writing department at Columbia University and lives in Brooklyn with her husband, painter Derek Buckner, their 2 sons and daughter. St. Ivo, her latest novel, was acclaimed by all the major markets. Everyone, please welcome Joanna.
Thank you. I wish I could see all your faces. Thank you so much, Christina, for that lovely introduction. And I was just thinking about things I remember about you, wonderful things from Columbia, and just memories I have of Milda. So I'm so thrilled to be here. This is my third Parentis reading, which is really exciting. And I remember we were just starting when my first reading. I think I was among your first readers.
You were, yeah. You were in the very, very first season. It was so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing to see.
And here you are, glamorous with all these novels, and so great.
I feel so glamorous right now, let me tell you. But I'm going to read from the beginning of my novel, not the very beginning, but page 26. I don't think I have to explain too much. My protagonist, Sarah, has had a discomforting lunch with her agent. She's a filmmaker. She's had a very strange day, and she is remembering. And then we go back to the present toward the end of the reading. So she's remembering. The summer Lita turned 5, Matthew found a garden apartment that shared its outdoor space with neighbors because the fence between the yards had been destroyed during a hurricane. Sarah had just finished shooting the second film, the studio film she was hired to direct, which she already knew was terrible. She wasn't in the greatest mood. They signed a year lease without meeting the neighbors, who were away for the month, and hoped they A, wouldn't be crazy, and B, wouldn't mind that Lita rose at 6 a.m., desperate to run outside. Several weeks after Lita had colonized the backyard with her assorted dolls and their accompanying castles and ballet schools and hospitals and movie theaters, the neighbors returned from their trip and introduced themselves that same night with a bottle of limoncello. After learning they'd come from Rome, where Armand had had a small part in his first movie, and the two of them had taken the rest of the month to travel, Sarah marveled at how they'd had the energy to be friendly after a transatlantic flight. She would have never managed to be so polite, so social. This was how the friendship took root. Armand and Kiki were always better behaved. They always led the way. When Armand emerged from the apartment, he was usually fresh from a shower and a shave. He remembered to drag Sarah and Matthew's garbage to the curb if they forgot. And Kiki cooked, but didn't even seem like she was cooking. What are you making? I don't know. I'm just slicing these sweet potatoes really thinly. What will you do with them? I'm not sure. And they'd be sauteed and served along with exotic greens and cheeses, and there'd be bread and wine, and Lita would taste everything, eat slowly in a way she rarely did with anyone else. Kiki was a public high school art teacher. Sarah remarked how Kiki's students must adore her. She and Armand both played with Lita, not only patiently, but with engagement, and didn't seem to mind the collection of plastic toys inevitably strewn around their cool, childless area. With its mod thrift store table and chairs and heavy marble ashtray. Sarah had imagined they were interested in having kids one day, but a week into their friendship, Kiki offered up her disinterest in motherhood in the same guileless manner that she prepared meals. Sarah found this disarming and felt a surge of affection toward Kiki, a sensation that may have stopped short of sexual attraction, but was easily as primal. Sarah could be, she knew, a bit easy come, easy go about friends, but she recognized that her feelings were not remotely neutral toward this person. Her immediate attachment to Kiki took her by surprise, but she didn't question that Kiki felt the same way. Maybe because of this deep and unfamiliar certainty, Sarah finally stopped apologizing for the mess, for not cooking, for Lita singing at the top of her lungs with tremendous cheer, as if she were auditioning for Disney or pretending to be a dog for hours at a time. Sarah stopped insulting her work on the studio film, stopped insisting the only reason her first film had been any good was because Matthew had been the DP. She stopped making self-deprecating remarks about how she'd been pregnant at Sundance when her first film premiere, so each photo of her was a fat photo, and how she'd been no fun. She stopped making dark jokes about how young she'd been when she found herself pregnant with Lita. She started to relax. One night in late summer, or maybe early fall, they let Lita fall asleep under the table, while in character, "Good night, doggy," and she slept for 3 hours. Everything seemed heightened, their laughter more hysterical, as if Armand, Kiki, and Matthew were all daring Sarah to keep having fun. She knew they should have carried Lita up to bed, but the night was warm, and Lita was sleeping, wasn't she? What had they laughed so hard about? Which stories had they told? September in the city was still her favorite time. The hard shine of the afternoon began easing itself into something softer. The sweat of her schlep to the city and back had dried and disappeared. Families were making their way out of the park and toward the subway, the bus. Some would go away for the weekend. Matthew ran a hand through his thin, graying hair she was grateful he still had. She wasn't supposed to care about these things. After all they'd weathered, how could she possibly? But she did. She felt a stab of tenderness. But as she began to tell him about Caroline's suggestion that she write a script about it all, she realized too late that she should have kept it to herself. "Have you ever?" Matthew asked. "Have I ever? Have you ever thought about making this your next film? A film about Lita?" "Yes, about Lita. About us. Have you ever thought of it? I know you're not into autobiographical material, but I also know you recognize a good story. I know how your mind works." "Do you?" "Yeah, I do. And I would not be surprised if you thought about writing something, even if you never intended to make it. You're a filmmaker. I don't care if you never make another film. I will always think of you as one." "But that's dumb," she shrugged, tears brimming, or maybe just sad. Why had she told him? She had no interest in his open-mindedness or his sympathy or disgust at the idea of fictionalizing and likely sensationalizing Lita and their family, or, least of all, what she realized he was working up to right then, though maybe it was worth considering. "I can't believe you think I should do that," she said. "I really can't." And just like that, she didn't care about the light or the season, or even Matthew. She turned from him and could, in that moment, have walked off forever. She remembered the beginning of their separation, with no daily need to maintain a display of hope. Something about being alone had been distinctly not sad. With nothing between her body and the sensation of loss, she realized she'd been protecting him from precisely how dark she'd become. She was relieved to be free from that charade, from him. I'm going to stop there.
Thank you, Joanna. That was lovely. I'm just going to ask you one question before we move on, because I'm going to be thinking about it. How much of, I noticed that your protagonist is a creative also, right? So how much of that protagonist is you? Like, did you choose?
Oh, so the protagonist is definitely not me. In the sense of the autobiographical details, which are extremely intense and specific, if you read the book, but certainly much of her brain and sort of commentary are, my inner thoughts or something. But she's a very, very badly behaved person, and she's not socially appropriate. And I would say I'm a very socially appropriate person, I think, she's badly behaved, and she's really on the edge mentally. So, this is the beginning of the book. You sort of start to realize that she's really unraveling, and the sort of engine of the book is how far will she go? So, thank goodness, despite, world situation, despite I'm okay.
Good. We're glad that you're okay.
I feel like the creativity part of the book and her work, despite the fact that she's a filmmaker and I'm a novelist, it is important, and I feel like that part is something that I do feel is important and something I connect with. And that's actually something my editor really wanted me to highlight. And she was interested when she bought the novel. She was the acquiring editor, and she really liked that it was a book that started with a woman, engaged in her work, or not engaged in her work, as the case actually is with this particular. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to come back to a discussion, but we're going to introduce our next reader first. Gae Polisner is the award-winning author of 6 novels: Inside of Stars, The Memory of Things, The Summer of Letting Go, The Pull of Gravity, and yay, Jack Kerouac is Dead to Me, which is her latest. Thank you. It was mentioned actually in the Nerd Daily in their article, and 48 YA book releases to look out for in 2020. That's pretty cool. She lives in Long Island with her husband. She's actually doing the COVID thing, so even though she's in Long Island, she's pretty much just at home like everyone else. She's got 2 sons and a suspiciously fictional looking dog who might bark. So you ready?
He already did. I had to mute myself. It was a good thing I learned how. So I'm going to read aloud from Jack Kerouac is Dead to Me. I'm actually going to read 3 brief sections, one from the beginning, one from the middle, and one toward the end. And really the only thing you need to know about it is it's the story. This is a YA, a young adult novel. It's really a YA crossover to adult, which means 14 and up. And it's about a girl who is almost 16, and she has been abandoned either emotionally or physically by her mother, her father, and most importantly to her in the moment, her best friend, Aubrey, who has started to judge JL for the way she's living her life. Namely that JL has turned to an older boy, Max, for solace. And so there are 2 things that JL turns to, tropical butterflies, which is why you see the butterfly on the cover, and this older boy who truly does love and appreciate her and is also not very good for her. So the book is framed by a letter to her friend Aubrey, and then it moves forward in time from April through June of her sophomore year of high school, and interspersed are flashbacks to all of the pivotal, or many of the pivotal events that have brought her to the moment that she's at. So the first moment I'm going to read to you is from the very beginning, late June, before 8th grade. The day is hot. We're running through the sprinkler in my backyard, dodging in and out of the cold spray that fans over us, shrieking as droplets rain down onto our sun-warmed, tanned skin. You push me closer as the arc of water returns, and I fall onto the grass, wet, laughing, taking you down with me. The sod under us is new and soft, and the freshly cut blades stick to our limbs, our faces. We are giddy with summer, with each other. We are still on the cusp of everything. Afterwards, you turn off the hose and we lie on faded chaise lounges we drag to the middle of my yard, our chests heaving with rapid, satisfied breaths in our barely filled out bikini tops. You reach out and take my hand, and an indescribable sort of electricity shoots through me, real and palpable, as if I could reach out the fingers of my other hand and touch it, some white hot charge that holds us together. We are friends, best friends, but more than that, we are entirely platonically in love. So then there's a moment where she's confessing to Aubrey in this letter of hers, something that has happened at a drunken party that Aubrey never knew before. And I just happen to love the writing in this moment, and it gives you sort of a sense of how she's on the cusp of things. To tell you the truth, Aubrey, I liked how it felt to be all dizzy and free like that. Maybe I felt like my mother in that moment, like I wanted to spin and whirl with my kimono falling open, my molecules loosening inside till I spilled breathless and sprawled onto the dew-dampened grass, My limbs splayed dangerously wide, my whole beautiful body, its bare, uncovered skin glistening beneath the star-dotted sky. I liked how it felt to be out of control, a moth on a carnival ride, ready to be swept off by the wind, every tenuous hair, every fiber, every quivering speck of me lit up on end and electrified. And then the last moment I'll read to you is just toward the very end of the book, but it won't be a spoiler, where she is referring in the first sentence to her boyfriend Max's motorcycle, which they have named after a tropical butterfly. So this is from late June, 10th grade. As long as I live, I'll never be able to adequately describe the freeness of riding on the back of Blue Morpho. The cold rush of air, hair trailing back, tangled in the wind. The rhythmic vibrato of motion and sound that blocks everything else from your head. Maybe that alone made everything worth it. Or maybe nothing ever will. But sooner or later, the wind dies down, the night sky lightens from gray to mauve to coral pink and back to periwinkle again, before the sun is out, up, rising high in the sky, casting a glare so strong you have to shield your eyes against the onslaught. Gas stations call, bathroom stops, and you realize you're not dressed properly, and gravel kicks up from the road so hard it leaves angry red welts on your shins. That's when the pieces threaten to come back to you, at first like a fever dream you can write off as confusion, exhaustion, delusion, as vague and unsure as the landscapes that fly past. But eventually, so fully crisp and unrelenting, you have to force yourself to ignore them, dismiss them, because otherwise they will take you down. But not yet they don't. First, the fever dream.
Thank you. So here's a question that that I think a lot of people who don't write young adult or children's fiction have. How is it determined that your book will be YA? Like, just because there's a protagonist that is young, is that, who decides what happens?
I think partly the market decides. Are young adult novels doing well now? And if they are, and you've written one, then that's pretty much where you're writing right now. But also the age of the protagonist. But I think things are starting to blur some. And like I said, this is actually, this book and my last few have come from Wednesday Books, which actually became a YA2 crossover publisher. And they started up for that reason. With St. Martin's Press. And so I think the thought was we're going to kind of blur those lines because there are a lot of adults reading YA and because there's so many levels of YA, but it hasn't, I think in Europe it's happened more, but.
Well, I think Anne Frank is a good example. Right?
There's many of them where the protagonists, I mean, even more recent ones like the Spelling Bee, I'm forgetting the name of it, Something in the Bee, and there's just so many of those books. Sumong kids books often have younger protagonists in them and stuff. So yeah, I think the age of the protagonist is the number one thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'll fall in that spot.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to more questions in a moment. So our final reader is someone I've known about 10 years now, which is crazy. I've seen her grow and change, and it's really been very pleasing. And I feel it's just so nice to see Elizabeth's work out, and her book is excellent. I really can't say enough about it. So Elizabeth Kadetsky, her memoir is in essays, The Memory Eaters, is the winner of the Juniper Prize in Creative Nonfiction. It was featured in the Boston Globe, LA Review of Books, the Rumpus, and other venues. She's a 2-time Fulbright Fellow, and she's the author of the memoir, First There Is a Mountain. The novella On the Island at the Center of the at the center of the world, and short story collection also, The Poison That Purifies You. She's an associate professor of fiction and nonfiction at Penn State University and a nonfiction editor at New England Review. So everyone, please welcome Elizabeth Kadetsky.
Hi, Christina. Thank you for that great intro. It's so nice to be here, and it's been great to listen to these great readings. So I'm reading from The Memory Eaters, which came out this spring, and it's a memoir in lyric essays, and a lot of it deals with me going into memories of growing up in New York in the late 70s and early 80s as a form of escape from a kind of rotten reality when my mother is descending into Alzheimer's, and my sister at this point in the book has attempted suicide and wound up in a mental health ward at Bellevue. So the book takes place in New York, the present moment, and then the past moment also takes place in New York. And I'm reading from an essay called Bombing the Ghost, which is a reminiscence about an exciting adventure that some friends of mine and I had when I was a teenager, and we went to do graffiti in a subway tunnel. But this section at the end comes after that anecdote, and I come home. And just some context, my mother was a fashion model at the time, and I make some references to the art scene and Jean-Michel Basquiat and Stuyvesant, which is the high school that my sister and I went to and was somewhat iconic. I think that's it. And let's see, Bianca Jagger comes up and Brooke Shields. Okay, so when I came home, the sun was just up. My mother was sitting on the sofa with the cat, the lights still on. Her eyes were glassy. I'd noticed with my girlfriends and myself that taking acid made us more beautiful, our skin dewier and our cheeks pinker. This was the case with my mother now. A project lay abandoned in the sewing machine on the other side of the room. "Are you tripping?" I said. It was what you said when someone was obviously tripping, because otherwise they wouldn't tell you. Jill, my sister, once spent a whole day with her boyfriend without his ever knowing. So you had to ask to find out, otherwise they'd be playing a game on you. My mother was whispering to the cat. "Look at this," she said, looking up at me. She gestured with her eyes to the cat's eyes. "Yes? Look." It was true that the cat was gazing up at her with a hypnotized expression. "He trusts me completely," she said. There wasn't anything to indicate this wasn't the case. Our cat had a hair-trigger personality, sometimes fritzing out like he touched an electrical wire. Sometimes he chased Jill into the closet. The cat's eyes looked glassy now. "Did you feed Cuckoo acid?" "No," my mother said. "Did you take acid?" "I always say, if you guys are going to take drugs, I'd rather you do it where I know you're safe. It was in the freezer. Look." She gestured back at the cat. "Watch this." She placed her pinky finger inside the cat's ear and gently screwed it in. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said. She twisted her long hair behind her in a manner she seemed to have picked up from Jill, and then shook it out and peered back at the cat. "Cuckoo," she gently whispered, and then made cooing noises while the cat continued to gaze back at her, transfixed. I go to the Strand bookshop this week and sit in the graffiti section for a long time, trying to fix an image of the pieces from that night. Anthem, Freddie, Shark. There's a wall of photo books on New York graffiti. Memory of Dark Side artists has not survived, but one of the books talks about acid writers, a crew we knew. These books are in the arts section near monographs by Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring. The information clerk has never heard of Keith Haring. I want to shake her. That this work endures in the arts section is testament to its enduring value, and yet her ignorance somehow obliterates it. What is its value? I feel overwhelmed, sensory, so full and vital. I can't quite articulate to myself what the feeling is, can't find words for it. I've become aphasic, like my mother now, with emotions and sensations bigger than a vocabulary to express them with. Why does this feel so good? Am I the only one who feels it? Back home that night, I watched the movie Downtown 81 for the 5th time, Glenn O'Brien's movie from the era with Jean-Michel Basquiat and Debbie Harry cast as leads. Most of the shots are at night. There's graffiti on every wall, squiggles that when I look hard turn into tags by people I knew. Basquiat's social circle overlapped with Jill's. There are nightclubs where my friends and I sneaked in. Legal was 18, so you got in by looking 15. At Peppermint Lounge, Basquiat with his corkscrew dreads held off at the velvet ropes. I remember standing right there with Jill and her crowd. I think it was New Year's Eve exactly, 1981. Me, a sallow and shapeless 15. A boy told me I looked like Bianca, I looked like Brooke. I didn't feel that power, but I was buzzed, coming down from tripping, and the notion felt sparkly. He was already creating a mythology of us. We all were. In Downtown 81, the camera lingers on a night scene around the corner from my current apartment at 14th Street and 2nd Avenue, also 2 blocks from the old Stuyvesant High. In the image is a neon banner, Disco Donut. It's a Kentucky Fried Chicken now. The girls used to hang out there just at the beginning of AIDS. Sharky called them trannies. Mornings, when we came from the subway, the ladies sat in a gaggle at the curb, drinking pop and slapping each other and talking in high voices. Get that purple thing off your head, one of them trash-talked Psyche once because of her psychedelic scarf. Get that purple thing off your head. After that, everyone greeted Psyche, saying that. There is a shot at a desolate Astor Place facing down Lafayette onto what is Walgreens now. The street is broad, imposing, empty. The buildings are large against an open sky. Today at that corner, the buildings are cluttered against a skyscape dense with wavy new postmoderns by Fumihiko Maki and Tom Main and Kazuyo Sejima. Until last year, this was the corner of Starbucks and Starbucks. Then the company got clear on business smarts and shut down the second one. I want to set the images right in the present. A moire is making me dizzy, this overlay of then on now, all the different thens. I want to settle the visual, fix the now so it's sharp, not nausea-inducing, so it overtakes this persistent past. How does one attach to the present when it is so constantly under construction? My maps keep getting remade. The MTA keeps configuring that iconic subway map in another new way, into a new icon, with routes that keep crisscrossing over the roots of the past, so quickly changing. This summer, there's a new M line. Why is it orange and not brown? Why is the M doing something completely different from what it used to do, acting like another version of the D? It's all wrong, but I know it will only seem wrong to me briefly. They've switched things up on us so often that we know we'll get past this problem of adjustment. We got over the conversion of the RR, the splitting of the NR, the dissolution of the QB. We adapt. I finished watching the movie for the 6th and 7th times and then contact Anthem on Facebook. I ask him to fill in my memories from that night at the Ghost. He replies saying he wasn't there, or at least in his memory he wasn't. He says it was probably just Shark and Freddie, but he remembers the art. He seems to think about that art a lot still. It was stunning, he said. DSA, he points out, has disappeared from cultural memory, ranking not a single hit on Google. It saddens me that such a cool bit of history has been undocumented, he writes. When Freddie granted me membership, it was like I had won an Oscar or something. He sends me images of art he's doing now. It's beautiful, in the same style as then, tags and pieces, but now on paper or screen, not walls. If there were movies of our high school years, would you watch them? He asks me. Or is reconstructing them more interesting?
That was wonderful.
Thanks.
You know what I love so much is that you're constantly playing with memory, history, like what is really your title, The Memory Eaters. It's like so much of everything is constantly being lost. And
I know.
We don't even know. We don't even realize.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with the memoir writer, that like there's no present moment. And that was one of the big challenges of the book, because you know, as I say in that essay, like the subway lines are getting changed as I'm writing the book, and I'm trying to write it in the present, but especially in New York, things just change so quickly. So that was partly why I chose essays, so that each essay can kind of have its own moment in time.
We're going to bring back everybody so that we can all talk together about this, because all of us were chatting back and forth going, oh my God, I miss old New York. And like, we all need to talk now. So let me just bring everybody back. Super fun. Oh man. But and the people that are viewing, you guys can chat comments as well. We can see your comments. And if you click like or heart, we can actually see that. And we like it. So, you know, feel free to shower us with happy things. But Elizabeth brought something up, which is really a thing, particularly starting in like 2016. Since then, there have been extraordinary changes in the actual living world as you're writing. Like, it is hard to finish a flash fiction without the world changing drastically between the beginning of your idea and like even just finishing it, not even getting it published. How are you guys dealing? Why don't you all sort of chime in? How are you all dealing with the fact that the world is changing faster than fiction can keep up?
Well, I write young adult, so I think even more so there are so many things that I'll call myself middle-aged woman doesn't know. So I literally just said today to somebody that I was talking to that this may be my last young adult novel for now, because I really feel like not only is the world changing so quickly, but then if you add technology to that, and the technology that we are not privy to, because the minute we're privy to it, the kids leave it. And the language and the way we view the world is really, you know, in many ways for the better, especially amongst younger kids, changing so much that I find myself writing YA and wondering where I put my, you know, my gender equality issues and who I'm referring to. I'm suddenly watching my romances as he and she and going, I need a they in there, and how do I do that? And I don't think I'm the best, you know, we get older and we aren't quite as privy to how it comes with a certain ease for a younger audience. So for me, it's a very big deal.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, in that essay, the use of the word trannies, you know, I had to look at it, you know, just now and just be like, well, at least it's in somebody else's words. But you know, when I first drafted that essay, you know, could have been 10 years ago, you know, I think my mind as far as language was in a different place. But I was going to say, I think we're lucky. I mean, maybe a mixed blessing of, you know, the awfulness of debuting a work in COVID times. I mean, maybe one positive is that we're starting, at least for me, I'm kind of starting a new project so I can shape the project to fit the times. I would hate to be in the middle of or toward the end of a project. It would be so hard.
Do you think it would be harder? Where are you guys in your next projects? Are you near the beginning or near the, like, have you started something new? Are you like toying, or are you like nearly finished with a next thing? You don't have to tell us what it is, just like where you are in the project.
I'm at the beginning of something. I mean, I was just doing research in India for it when COVID hit. So I can definitely, I mean, I think it's really changing because of COVID. Yeah.
You're going to have to you're going to have to transform it a little bit to accept.
Oh yeah, very much. But it's not too late to do that. Yeah. I mean, I'm at the beginning.
What about you, Joanna? Are you working on something right now that, like, are you somewhere in the middle, beginning, or end?
I'm extremely far from, I'm really not working on something, and it feels,
I feel like there needs to be like a name for that, like COVID emptiness, despair. Despair.
I know, but to be honest, I usually feel this way after I publish the novel, and I feel like I'm trying to have faith that I usually at some point come up with something that I care about and I want to enter and explore. But I feel very far from it now, and it is disorienting, and I feel a bit afraid. But at the same time, what I'm really going to try to do, or am doing right now, is really consciously making the space to read and read.
Mm.
And so, and, you know, just sort of listen and make room for other people's voices, because it's not my time right now. And I mean, a lot of that maybe is, it's certainly COVID, and I have 3 children, and I'm.
What are their age range? Yeah, I want to hear what everybody's age is. What are they dealing with in their house right now?
I have 14-year-old boys who will be 15 in the fall, and then I have a 5-year-old daughter. So, it's, you know, we're really just in it. Like it's just a lot of just feeding people and childcare. And I mean, I think that if I were working on something when COVID hit, I think I would somehow find the time. I'm always like, I don't know about you, but I always feel like, how did I write that book? I have no idea. I didn't have any time, and I made the time. Like somehow I make the time. I always make the time. If I'm making the time, if it's there, I'm making the time. But right now, it's just not. It's not bubbling up for me. So I'm just really trying to listen and like keep my feelers out, and yeah, listen to other people and read. That's my goal right now.
Reading is so refreshing. Like it really, you forget, if you stop reading for a while, you forget how much it matters to just pick up something. I just started a book that is so literary. It is so far on the literary spectrum that I am not sure if it was written as poetry or a novel. Like it is so densely full of words that are beautiful and that is clearly crafted. And it is such a weird book, and it's this long that I'm not even sure if it's just a long poem. Like it's
What
amazing.
book is it?
Oh gosh, it's got a title. Okay, so the book is called The Log of the SS the Mrs. Unguin. I don't even know. It's like one of those things where you read it 1,000 times, but you don't pronounce it in your head. Anyway, The Log of the SS, the Mrs. Ungetween. But the intro was by Ben Marcos, and I can't remember the name of the author right now because I'm having COVID head, where things just evaporate when you're trying to talk for more than a minute. But it's very good, and it's about a housewife on a boat trying to deal with her loss of identity.
Wow.
Possibly in an apocalypse with trees.
Wow.
It's pretty special.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I'm reading.
That sounds
What are you guys reading? What are you reading? What are you doing? Talk to us.
Yeah. You know, I agree about reading also. I mean, I'm finding that I just don't have time. I have one kid who just turned 6 and, you know, has been out of school. He's been out of school since January because we were in India. And then we got back, and there was no school. And luckily we can go outside. So, I mean, I'm not hating life. I mean, we do fun stuff, but it's just so hard for me to get time, like an hour a day just to, you know, respond to emails. But I have been doing some reading on audiobooks. And then one thing I find I can do is if I'm listening to a book on audiobooks, then I can go back to the book and actually savor the language. And if I don't have 100% concentration, it's okay because I've already gotten the storyline. It's a little bit just non-linear because I'm reading the book in 2 different forms. But I agree. I mean, that's been happening with me where just being in another world is helping me so much now. So the book I'm reading right now is called Beneath the Lion's Gaze by Maza Mengiste, about Ethiopia. It's a novel. It's beautiful. And it's about the fall of Emperor Haile Selassie, you know, a history I know very little about. And it's just wonderful to be immersed in this world and forget about Donald Trump for a while. And the horrors that we're, you know, just seeing politically here. Oh.
It's extraordinary. Gae, what are you reading? How are you distracting yourself?
I mostly distract myself and write by swimming. So thank goodness for that. I spend a lot of time in the water, both my pool and the open water. And that's where I'm happiest these days. Unless my kids are playing music. I have 2 older boys. So you just saw one of them pass by. that's been its own unique challenge because I have kids at home with me who shouldn't be at home, and it breaks my heart that they're at home as much as I love having them at home. I have 2 college graduates, one on a 6-year plan, one on a typical 4-year plan, both who are graduating this spring. So they both had their own version of.
That is, it's so true. That whole, I wonder what's going to happen to all those kids that are meant to be out of the nest. They're meant to be flying, and they're just being crammed in a nest full of other kids and parents and
fear and
I worry
people
about that.
who are more at risk than they are, so their lives are not only cut short but then suffocatingly small, and it's challenging and upsetting. But I did want to actually just remember to say one thing, which is in the intro, which is very understandable because I promise you I remember what it's like to have small kids. But you talked about writing despite having kids at home, which is so true. But I also just want to say that I would never have 1 book, let alone a 7th coming out, if not for kids.
Tell us.
Yeah.
How does this work?
So I had a whole first career. I'm an attorney by practice, and I didn't go back to writing. I wrote all the time when I was young, but I didn't go back to writing until my early 30s when I had 1 toddler and 1 in my belly. And I would never have withstood the rejection of trying to get published, but for the fact that I had young kids at home watching me. And I wanted to show them that I could do it. So if not for them, I would not be a published author. So there's 2 sides to it.
Wow, that's beautiful.
That's a really good incentive. To be like, prove it to your kids.
Yeah, that you could get 1,000 rejections. All the things I was going to tell them when they tried out for basketball and got cut for the team, or didn't get the chair they wanted in clarinet or whatever instrument they were playing, I suddenly realized that I was going to tell them over and over again to not quit and to not let it affect anything except their desire to do better and try harder. And then I was like, oh, I can show them. And so I just remember, like, back in the days when I was first submitting to publishers, there was still snail mail going on. And I would come in with the envelopes, the rejections, the very, slim rejections. And I would say, here's another one, but mommy's going to keep going. And so, yeah, it really did. When people ask, how did you do that? That is how, because I had kids watching me.
That's great. What about now with writing? Like you're almost done. No, you're all sorry. Hello. I just got very distracted by something in my home, and which is very hard to finish a sentence when that happens. The benefits of being secluded. I meant to say, in your book launches, so you have all launched books not during quarantine. How is it different? What has happened? What are different things that you're doing besides just, well, there's a Zoom and there was never a Zoom? Like how has it affected the actual launch, the conversations with your editors? Like, how is this going? Tell us how it's going.
It's horrible.
Is it worse?
I'll let somebody else talk. But I launched 2. It's horrible.
You launched 2 books during COVID?
Yes, because they were supposed to come out a year apart, but I had broken my hand, so one of my deadlines got pushed forward. This is a young adult, and then I have a debut middle grade out that I co-wrote with someone. So Jack KEROUAC was actually supposed to be 2019, and then 7 Clues was going to be 2020, but they both got bumped to 2020. So I like to say I launched 2 books into the abyss.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does it feel like that? And is it because you don't get to see the responses from people? Like
No,
that, like when you're in a bookstore, you can read and people come and you have, attendance. Like, I'm trying to get people to just click like so that we can actually see that they're there.
I would just love, I would love to be connecting with people in person. I mean, I just remember the book tour I did for my first book, and it was just so fun. It was like people would ask me controversial questions and, get into it. And it was just like, I was so just living that book, for months after it came out. And yeah, it's hard not to feel that this is disappointing. I mean, there have been some really positive things, like connecting with other authors who are, just this sense of kind of support in groups and people coming together and learning about so many new books that I might not have had on my radar otherwise. But the news, I don't know, like I saw news that book sales in the month that my book came out were way down. There was one list that I saw that I thought would be sort of a shoe-in for my book that comes out every month. It didn't even come out the month that I launched. I put so much work into, organize. Anyway, I don't mean to kind of rant, but it was just like exhausting, just putting so much work into events and then have them cancel and then recreate the events. So, I mean, it is what it is. It could be worse. One thing is, my book came out at the end of March, and I thought, oh, this is the absolute worst time. And I begged my publisher to change the date to August, and we're still there.
Till August, yeah.
So many people are kind of in this boat. So solidarity, that's the big.
I actually think that in the scheme of things, because the launches were within this first little window, that in some respects, actually lucky. Because
there was some energy. There was energy.
And a lot of people just kind of motivated to help each other, and publishing was willing to, help. And the people who come later, it's like that's sort of waning a little bit.
Burnout, yeah.
So, yeah.
But there's certainly like a Zoom burnout where people don't want to necessarily go on a Zoom to, even participating on a Zoom, people still want to do. But the like watching a whole Zoom, people are like, Although I think things like this are cool because you can just put them on while you're cooking or something. Like where you don't actually have to be on screen yourself, but you can watch it. Like I still like those. I like the ones where you can just like play it and do whatever you're doing and like listen in and not. But yeah.
But Christina, I think we're really excited about your book. Christina just launched a book, so I see where you were going with that, and yeah, I get it. But I'm excited. People are excited about your book. It's getting a lot of buzz.
It's been really lucky. Yeah. I honestly was, that moment when we realized it was actually COVID. I was like, there was that doom, and my first book came out not too long after my first book came out. 9/11 happened. So,
Wow.
So you should be a professional at this. It's like disaster publishing. It can be like its own thing.
No, you're right.
But in a way, it's like, you know what? The worst has happened. So in a way,
knock on.
It makes you feel, because it's like the worst has happened. It can't get worse than this.
Knock on wood again. Really knock on wood when you say that. But
one thing I will say for YA and children's is that because mine launched right in the beginning of COVID, unlike the enthusiasm you're talking about, I felt very much like there were bigger concerns going on. People weren't feeling well, but also all the libraries closed. So their library orders, I write quiet literary YA, no big dystopian and fantasy. I count on library sales. And I felt very much that by the time the libraries opened back up and were looking through their order list, they're really looking at either the big books, the very, very relevant to what's going on books, Black Lives Matter type of stories for children that they want on their shelves, or they're looking for pre-orders. So I really felt like I took a hard hit. And I do feel like there's some ability coming back in to read. The libraries are open back up. Everybody's at least looking to figure out how to do this again. So
we just got a comment actually from YouTube in which a librarian said that she's ordering more digital copies now. So that's good. Like that's good news for all of us. I think that they're trying to feed more books out to the kids. I mean, certainly I'm making my kids read more where I have control, which is only with one of my two children. But
I had like a terrible time reading.
Wait, one at a time. I didn't hear either one of you. What did you say, Gae?
I had a really hard time reading. I've read very little since this started, so I couldn't fault anybody. Yeah. I would just start and stop things, and then I would literally go turn on some mindless TV show because it distracted me from the misery. So did any of you have that, where you had a hard time reading that?
I loved getting away from it all into a book like that. But it was getting into the book was kind of hard. Like you have to really shut out the world. And what were you going to say, Elizabeth? You guys were talking on top of each other.
Well, just all those review copies that were sent out in February. You know, like where did they go? Nowhere. Like nobody had figured out how to get their mail.
That's really hard. Right. And are they doing, I guess they must be mostly doing electronic review copies now, just for not having to send anything physical.
We sent all these ARCs that, you know, they're probably still sending mail.
I don't know if anyone's heard differently, but my understanding is that literary fiction specifically has really, even though people are reading during this time, the closing of the brick and mortar actual bookstores has really affected book sales in a, like, even though you can order it from Bookshop and the A Word and, you know, all the online retailers, still people aren't discovering books in the same way. And I thought that was both really depressing, you know, for those of us who write, you know, these books, but also kind of enlivening, just the idea that people, you know, going into shops and talking to the bookstore owners.
But there's something new that just launched. That do you guys know about bookshop.org that just launched? Like that, we're selling all of your books on bookshop.org because you guys get money, indie bookstores get money, the ones that are still open. Like, and because when you order through it, they place the order to an indie bookstore that's local to the person, and then we also, Parentis gets a nice percentage of any books that are sold through bookshop.org. Yeah. And it's like our bookshop is called Terrific Writers Who Are Parents. And it's like we have all these lists of like the different people who read at our salons at different times, and anything that's bought through there. I mean, it's kind of like the anti-Amazon. Like it's really good because you can go through and like it really, like you guys get your typical royalties, whatever you would normally get off a bookstore, because they're buying it from a brick and mortar bookstore. The money goes to the bookstore. I don't even know how it works, but I think it's fantastic. And it's a .org, so it's a nonprofit of some sort. But I think it was created to help
for the bookshop to put up.
I do. Let me see if I can find it somewhere. There it is. Okay, it's going up on the comments so people can.
It's fantastic.
It's so cool. Yeah, I mean, it's like, so that's like one thing that I want to be like, okay, this thing came out of quarantine. That's really good. Like, that's really good. The other thing, I don't actually mind these Zooms. Like, I think it's kind of great to have writers come from all different, that would normally not be able to travel to, like, we're able to get a much more diverse group of people together, because people who could not travel necessarily from like the Midwest or the West Coast or somewhere to come to New York, they can still like Zoom in. And then we get a really interesting and more diverse like combo of people, you know, instead of just all the Brooklyn people.
That's one thing that's been really amazing about the book events I've had during the launch is they've been very well attended and from all over the world. Like Harvard Bookstore gets a lot of people from Australia, and you know, it's just really interesting and inspiring to see, you know, people writing in comments, and then you realize they're in, you know, Africa or you know, overseas. So that's inspiring.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I'm always curious, like you Facebook Live people and YouTube people that are watching, say where you're from in the comments. We would love to know, like, who's watching us, because we don't have any idea. And it's usually, you know, we'd be doing these salons and we could actually talk to you and meet with you and really talk to you. So if you do have any questions for these authors, like we can see your comments if you put them in the thing. So if you have any questions for any of these authors, please post them in the comments. And even if you're watching this like as a recording, because this will be recorded and it will be released as a recording. Look, somebody from Ontario, yay, Canada.
Can we move there?
Go Canada, yes.
I'm just going to befriend anybody from Canada in the chance that I can move there.
That's so true. Look, Washington, D.C. Hi, Chrissy. So it's really cool. And I mean, I think that that's really neat that we can have that many, you know, people in one space from all these different places. I think it's really cool. What else has happened for you during your book launches that you've found, or different things? Somebody from Long Island, shout out to Long Island.
No, that's a question about the
yeah, of course.
Do
it. Go.
So since there hasn't really been that much time, I just thought it'd be nice if you could give the audience a feel for your book, and if there's a scene that you particularly love or feel that it resonates with what your work really is about, could you share that with us, Elizabeth?
Yeah. Let me just find it. There's this like dramatic. I'll read a really dramatic scene. I just have to find it. So the book is called The Memory Eaters because it's partly about perception. And so, you know, if you heard what I read about everybody sort of being on drugs.
Oh, can I just say the bit about like acid making you more beautiful, correct me up. It was very funny. I was like, okay, well, maybe that's my new COVID regimen to get both beautiful and distracting.
But like in that moment. Okay. So it's partly about like perception and how the main characters in the book, who are me, my sister, and my mother, are all kind of in these warped modes of perception. My mother with Alzheimer's, my sister dealing with drugs and addiction, and me kind of escaping into nostalgia. So, and also the book deals with trauma and how trauma distorts perception. So I'll read this one scene where things did get very, very surreal in the present moment. And it's basically that my mother was going to a day center and they would pick her up in a van every day, and my sister was living with her, and my sister would meet the van, and I was living in the East Village at the time. My mother and sister were in Long Island City, and I didn't quite realize, or I was in denial about how vulnerable and volatile that situation was. My mother was dropped off in the van, and my sister was not answering the buzzer. And so the day center called me, and they were like, you have to show up right away. And not only that, we're kicking your mother out of the day center. So I run over to Long Island City on the subway. On the other hand, by the time I get off the subway in Long Island City 20 minutes later, my mind has moved past the current obstacle and projected itself to the next one. I aim to complete an air conditioner installation that I began yesterday but couldn't finish because it turned out the socket was busted. I have a power strip to attach the new unit to a working outlet, foam to weather strip it, blue tape to cover the burned electrical plate. I'm not thinking of the inevitable swerve, really. For instance, where is Jill, my sister? It's the hottest day of the year so far. I can make out my mother from the subway exit 2 blocks away, dressed in white and spreading her arms at me and doing one of her dances. A heat haze makes her look wavy. Her hair is thick and black, her face expressive, olive-skinned, dramatic. Aren't you hot? I ask when I reach her. She hugs me. It's so nice to see you, my darling. Look at you, your hair. What did you do? Your teeth, they're so great, just great. There's also pantomime, gesture. She spins me around, looks, hugs again. Aren't you hot? I repeat. The heat is making me dazed. I don't mind the heat, she says. It's rising off the pavement in ripples. She hugs the van driver, who is visibly sweating from open pores on his reddened forehead, nose, and cheeks. My mother and I walk up the stairs to her third floor landing, and I think it's fortuitous that I've made it out to Long Island City on this hottest day of the year, so Jill and my mother can have air conditioning. I'm not thinking of the inevitable swerve, though, as my mother walks ahead of me on the steps. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit. They call from the day center. I hang up on them. Her voice on the telephone drones on as I reach the inside of the apartment, my mother trailing behind, and walk into the bedroom to deposit the air conditioner supplies. There, I am startled by the sight of Jill passed out on the bed. Swerve. I hang up on her just like that, click, and the day center person is gone. Jill has cut marks and thin patches of dry blood on one arm. The blood is cracked and translucent, not copious, not like she slit her wrist or anything. I call David, Jill's case manager at Bellevue, to tell him there's an emergency. I leave a message. I don't think Jill's body is a corpse. I think she's not dead. I think that I can see barely a small movement in her chest. Rather, I imagine what it would be like if she were a corpse. I'm vaguely aware of my mother standing behind me, peering at Jill over my shoulder. I see two images of Jill in parallax, one as she is, the other as a corpse. Slowly, the two images move closer together until they're lined up. Then I realize there's virtually no difference. It turns out she's okay. But I'll end there.
Great moment. Thank you for sharing. Joanna, do you have a moment like in your book that you'd like to share?
You can talk. You can either read it or talk about it or whatever.
Yeah.
Hard to. I'll just read a very, very brief passage that I feel is significant. Okay, so it's also in the very beginning. She just had this unsettling personal lunch. She went over the lunch and the subway ride, unwittingly weaving together two sets of images and phrases until she forced herself to think of anything else, and a group of kids, maybe 8 years old, popped into her head. They took wilderness skills classes in Prospect Park, and she often saw them here, dismissed around this time. The kids were so cute and also easy to mock. Wilderness skills in Brooklyn. But it wasn't too difficult to imagine how, when autumn came, and when the park's entrance became a dark mouth blowing bitter air, the idea of knowing how to use a compass would seem pretty shrewd. She imagined a son, a boy named Alex, his expression as she approached. He was lanky and freckled, with a mop of dark hair, big feet, dazzling smile. Even though she always picked him up from the park, his face lit up every time. She supposed she wasn't the only person who daydreamed these glimpses. Other children, other husbands, other lives. She dreamed of the children she might have had, if this or that pregnancy had taken, if this or that man had been hers. Sarah once met a woman in the support group who was significantly older than she. And though the woman looked tired and sad, she also looked stylish. Sarah remembered a blush-colored boucle sweater, and what solace Sarah had taken in the care of the woman who showed her. She'd been frank about cutting off her daughter. I'm done, she told Sarah. It's over. She's not getting any more money. I have already given. Do you know what I mean? I gave it the office. I gave it the door. Where was she? Where was Sarah? I'm with our daughter again, Matthew. And everyone calls me Matt except for me. I'll stop there. But she's kind of like starting to fracture, basically.
Great, thank you. Gae, do you have a moment in your book that is special for you?
So I think the 3 readings that I did were kind of a couple of my favorite moments, but I'll read you sort of a pivotal moment. JL, her older boyfriend, thinks, he calls her jailbait, but it's not as horrible as it sounds. He It was a play on saying JL, 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 and then he started to say jail, and she doesn't mind it, but of course everybody around her thinks it's horrible, and so you'll hear that reference in there. But this is a point in the story where JL remembers that there's some money stuck aside and that Max needs his motorcycle that's going to take him cross country. He needs the money to fix it, and she remembers about it. She's in her mother's room. I head to Mom's closet, which is more like a small walk-in dressing room and leads to the master bathroom. The rods on each side are draped with her silk kimonos. There must be at least 20 in their various Crayola colors, dangling with tassels and ties. Some have belts, others frog closures of braided rope. She prefers the light, skimpy ones that look like lingerie and flutter against her like a breeze. I walk through, arms out, letting the cool fabric slip across my skin, the smell of her, some exotic flower washing over me. One of my favorites, blush pink with dark magenta cherry blossoms embroidered down the front and around the hem, slides from its hanger. So I wrap it around me and sit at her vanity, staring at my face in the mirror. My hair is a mess. I gather it in my fingers and braid it loosely down the back. I don't wear much makeup, just eyeliner, the remnants of this morning's now faded brown smudges around my lids. And my freckles, invisible in winter, have begun to dot my cheeks where they'll come in full force with my tan in summer. I like your freckles, jailbait. I squint and try to see myself the way Max seems to, sexy and sophisticated like my mother. But all I see is a girl, plain and simple and boring, right out of some Norman Rockwell poster. The one with the girl in braids looking at her reflection in the mirror. I pull the braid apart, drop my head forward, and let the hair fall in front of me, shake it around and whip my head up, letting it spill wild and full around my face. I pout my lips and put on one of Mom's bright red lipsticks, exaggerating the curves, then find a charcoal eye pencil and draw myself thick, dramatic lines. There, better. I look more like how I feel. I smile and think of Max, the sound of him moaning as he moved in my hand, the slick stickiness of him covering my fingers after. I slip my hands down between my thighs, thinking of how it will feel to have him touch me, pretending I'm him until I lose myself, my breath fast. I forgot this was so racy. Then sit finally quiet and still. There, I say aloud to my face in the mirror. Better. Now we have work to do, JL, money to find, a trip to take with Max Gordon. I slide open drawer after drawer, wading through miscellaneous pill bottles and old makeup cases and containers, costume jewelry and sparkly hair combs, blow dryer attachments and brushes, my mother's flat iron, but don't find anything but junk on the left side or the first two drawers on the right. But in the third drawer down, I feel it immediately. Tap my fingernail to metal. Even without looking, I know. I pull the box out and open its dull pink lid, lips dry, blood rushing in my ears. It's just like I remembered, where index cards might be, a thick roll of $100 bills. I slam it closed, slide it to the back of the drawer, and shut that, making sure everything is exactly how I left it. I'm going to skip over a part till she comes back to it. On my way out, I change my mind again, yank open the drawer with the box, and shove the entire wad of bills into my pocket. So be it. She'll probably never even notice it's gone. As I turn to go, I catch my reflection in the edge of the darkened mirror. Red lips, wild hair, jailbait. I smile. Maybe Aubrey is right. Maybe I'm a slut and a thief and a Jezebel. I pucker my lips, hold my hand to my mouth, and blow a kiss goodbye to that sweet Norman Rockwell girl.
Thank you. That was lovely. So yes, so, there are a lot of great books coming out right now during COVID, but you want to buy these three books. These three books are the best. Plain and simple. So we have all the links on the side, so you can scroll down and click on the link, and you can just purchase it right away, which is really great. Or on Bookshop, right, Nilda?
Yeah, on Bookshop, there's a link underneath the LIVECAST, so you can find it. And I wanted, before we go, if each of you could just give if you have like one thing that kind of gets you through when you're down during this quarantine, what is it that that you can give to the audience to be like, okay, you can do this. Like you can finish your book and sell it and market. How do you do it? What's your thing? It's a piece of advice. Don't all jump at once.
Well, it's hard for me because I told you I swim. So I'm saying, so my number one thing is, I guess if not swim, go do what you love. Go take a hike in the woods. Go take a ride on your bike. Go take a bubble bath and sink down under the water. But for me, I go out in the water.
And is that something that you did even before? Like that's always I remember you saying that like the first time you came to read for us, you swam. Like
yes, I started it just then. I had started it just then. So it's about a decade now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Joanna, what's your thing? How do you get all this out?
What first came to my mind was the same thing. For me, it's some kind of exercise, some kind of physical activity. I feel like I need that so badly, and I think everyone does. But I do think there is a connection to my work as well, even though I'm not being productive work-wise right now. I do think that with swimming or dance or running, I've had breakthroughs with my work when I'm running. And sort of my mind is quiet somehow, but it has to do with moving my body. So I think like being in my body and being in my body. I think that's it.
That's great. What about you, Elizabeth?
So yeah, I totally. I'm not muted. Okay. Yeah, me too. Actually, I'm a swimmer also, and I was able to get back to the pool about a month ago. It's been great, but this whole idea that like we don't want to go back to normal. So sometimes I've been able to sort of take comfort and joy in that. And one thing that a lot of people said at the very beginning was, give people the benefit of the doubt. Like everybody is running on no fuel right now, and people are short-tempered, and like every situation that you might get really angry or frustrated in, like probably everybody else is also going through that. And that's just really, I've just tried to keep hold of that, and this idea of empathy, which I've always tried to be empathic, but I just think that especially at the beginning, it was a huge reminder to just get into other people's points of view. And so many things are frustrating for me, now. I have so many opportunities to be just anxious or angry or frustrated. And it really just helps me get out of that, to keep remembering that everybody else has something that you don't know what they're dealing with. And somehow just releasing that negativity has like really helped my creativity. And I just really want to hang on to that.
That's great. And it's such a thing that, we all can do that. We're writers, we can get into other people's heads. And if we could just do that in our everyday lives, try to see it from other people's points of view, try to see where they're coming from, like let it go a little bit if possible. I think that's really great. So I really, really want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank our lovely viewers, especially the ones that did a little interaction so that we knew that they were there. That was really cool. I want you all to just know how grateful I am that you took some time out of your summer and came and like hung out with us. That was really cool. I hope to see you at your next novel, memoir, poetry collection, play, opera, whatever you're working on now. I hope to see that. And I want to thank you all for coming. You can all wave at the camera and say, we're going to say goodbye now. Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.